You gotta do your door, Robert?
Huh?
You gotta do your door?
No, I was just getting that glare out that was behind me.
So here we are, the Heartland Podcast. I have one of the most distinguished environmental activists, civil rights activists in the country sitting with us today, and I'm really honored. His name is Robert Taylor. He's from St. John the Baptist Parish, Louisiana, and he is one of the most important environmental activists today in the world. And he's fighting not only for the survival of our planet by what he's doing, and I'll tell you about that in a moment, and then we'll get down to the news we're going to break. He's fighting for his community too. I know it's difficult for some to believe that we could have a kind of genocide going on in America, but we do. And you can define that in a lot of different ways. They can be big, they can be small, but it's taking a particular people and extinguishing them. And that's what's happening where Robert lives. This 85-mile stretch of river between Baton Rouge and New Orleans has received the notorious name Cancer Alley because people are dying 15 to 20 years prematurely from cancers, kidney disease, liver disease, respiratory disease. There are some 200 chemical plants packed in these 85 miles, and they are spewing ethylene oxide, benzene, toluene, and in the case of where Robert lives, chloroprene, which is a powerful cancer-causing agent. The chemical is coming from a plant called Dupont Denka. It is built on what is known as the Old Bell Plantation, Bell Point Plantation. And that plantation is just north of another plantation called the Woodland Plantation. These are huge swaths of land. And in the 1960s, DuPont bought portions of the Bell Point Plantation and put in an elastomer plant. I think at that time it was called the Pontchartrain Elastomer Works. This was around 1969. People thought it would bring jobs. They thought it would be good for the community. What it has turned out to be is a chemical overseer, someone enforcing racist policies as powerfully as pre-Civil War Louisiana. It's just a different kind of civil war. This is lawfare. Robert Taylor has led the fight against Dupont Denka to rein in the chloroprene emissions, which are multiple times above even the lenient federal Environmental Protection Agency standards. He has been opposed by the governor of Louisiana, Jeff Landry. He has been opposed by the head, if you can believe this, of the Department of Environmental Quality. I think Chuck Carr Brown is his name. Robert can correct me. And yet through all of this, he has been succeeding. In case you don't know, the levels of chloroprene at the Dupont Denka plant have gone down. They're still way high, but it's because of his agitation, because of his filing civil rights, because of his making people uncomfortable, that there's any progress at all. He's been standing up for the kids of the Fifth Ward School. And now we're going to break some important news today. The Trump administration dropped the EPA Department of Justice lawsuit that had been filed against Dupont Denka to curb those emissions. This was during the time of the Joseph R. Biden administration, when we almost had achieved a new vision of civil rights and environmental justice in the Deep South. Landry, the now governor of Louisiana, sabotaged those efforts. Now, Trump has told his Department of Justice to drop the lawsuit, but it's not dead. It's being brought back to life, and that's because of Robert Taylor. So I'd like to introduce you to a very heroic figure. Robert Taylor, welcome to the Heartland Podcast.
Thank you very much, David. I'm honored to be here with you.
Tell us a little bit about what you're doing with regards to the lawsuit that the Trump administration has dropped.
Well, my first goal was to get it back in court. So with the help of some local attorneys, well, we filed notice that we intend to take this case back to court.
There's a provision in the law that allows public citizens, this is the voice of the people, Robert is speaking for the people. There's a provision in environmental law, in many of our nation's environmental laws, that allows citizens to take up lawsuits in the public interest. Is that what you're doing in this case, Robert?
That's exactly the case, David.
So you're becoming a citizen enforcer.
Well, yes, you could say that.
You're working on behalf of the people. You're the plaintiff.
Yes, sir.
What's the name of your nonprofit public interest group?
The Concerned Citizens of St. John.
Tell us a little bit about how you began it.
Well, it began with EPA coming to our community, holding a town hall meeting to inform us of the dangers that DuPont presented to our community. EPA had to come and do it because the local government was not. And when we found out what we were really being subjected to by that chemical plant, the pastor of the church where I was, and one of the politicians, our councilman at large, Mr. Larry Chloroprene, the three of us co-founded the Concerned Citizens of St. John. And we started to work diligently to make the community aware and to get the government, local and state and federal, to come in and protect us.
How did that go? What was this during the first Trump administration?
No. This was in oh yeah, this was
Obama?
This was 2017.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had some shred of an EPA at that time. They were actually out there. Were they being, in your opinion, helpful, or were they just telling you you've got a problem and not doing anything about it?
Well, you said it. They gave us the impression that they were trying to help us, but they really, I'm talking about Region 6. We were dealing with Region 6. That's the one we live in. They're based in Dallas. And they were the ones that we were dealing with. And yes, they were coming to our meetings and giving us advice. But then we found out that when they would leave our meetings, they would immediately call Dupont Denka and inform them of everything we talked about and the things that we were doing. So we knew then that we could not really rely on them for help.
How did you find that out? How did you find out that EPA was informing Dupont Denka of your meetings with them and giving away any strategies that you might have?
We were able to intercept their emails.
Was that through a court hearing? Was that through litigation? How did you get those emails?
They were emailing them. That's how they were communicating with them. When they would leave our meetings, after our meetings, then they would email. That's how they was getting that's how they were communicating with Dupont Denka.
Did someone send you those emails? Did EPA send them? Did you get them through a journalist?
Well, of course, EPA didn't send them. It was some attorneys who intercepted them and made us aware of it.
That's interesting. I just want to go talk about the Biden administration for a moment. Things changed when Joseph R. Biden and the Democrats came in power, didn't they?
Things changed drastically, David. We, in our desperation, we had been trying to get help. We had been trying to get the attention of our local and state government to the extent that we planned a 50-mile march from the school in question where these children were being poisoned. From Fifth Ward Elementary, we marched to Baton Rouge to the governor's to the state capitol.
That was the famous 5-day march of
Yes,
2019, I believe.
yes. And of course, he ignored us as he had always done it, as if we were not there.
Let's remind people this was a Democrat governor.
Yes,
This was John Bell Edwards, which brings up a
yes.
huge voting problem in Louisiana with fake Democrats. Go on. He ignored you.
Yeah, he ignored that. And we really didn't get any support from any of our elected officials. At the time, there were a number of elected Black officials on the state level, but none of them ever really supported our environmental movement.
Let me ask you something, Robert, in this regard, because I think this is important for folks to know. Concerned Citizens, Healthy Living Foundation, and Rice St. James publish a little community newspaper in the river parishes. And you one time told me that the levees that are very important culturally and politically to folks, because you may protest on them, you may gather on them, you celebrate on them, and you need to be able to protest around chemical plants that may be on the riverbanks, and then you have to have access to do your demonstrations. But in 2020, Kendrick Brass and Ed Price were among those Democrats who actually passed legislation that would have made criminals out of anyone demonstrating on those levees. Isn't that so?
Heartbreakingly so. All of a sudden, something I've grown up with all my lives, I grew up on those levees. And now, when we go on the levees to try to protest, they turned around and made it a criminal law, made it a felony to protest on the levees.
And those
And
were
it
two
was supported.
Democrats. And those were
Yes,
two Democrats.
yes, they were.
As we drill down on the deep problem that Louisiana has with its own Democrats, I want to mention a couple of other things. Robert Taylor is also a well-known rhythm and blues keyboard artist, and he played for the late great Otis Redding, Etta James, and I believe Sam Cooke. Robert's band was called Bobby Taylor and the Uniques, if I'm not mistaken. You can always correct me, Robert.
That's correct.
Yeah, and they were so good that these fabulous recording artists, these legendary rhythm and blues players, recruited Robert and his band to tour with them. And Robert and I are going to be doing a series of podcasts. This is just the first. And I really want to drill down deep into your touring days, Robert, because folks, Robert is living history. He has to share things that we all need to know about because it's our American history, and it's not only is it fascinating, but it's sobering and educational. Robert, tell me how these rhythm and blues artists like Sam Cooke and Otis, how did they influence you in terms of your activism? Because they were activists themselves, weren't they?
Yes, they were. Certainly they were. But their influence on me was primarily in the entertainment field. See, because being in Louisiana, most of the artists worked out of New York City. That's where the major booking agencies were. And when they would book the tours, those guys would come south. And we had a New Orleans branch that would recruit the local musicians, such as myself, to back these guys up when they came to do these tours. And yes, Otis was one of the many popular at the time in the early '60s musicians who toured down south. And I was with the group. We were hired to support these guys.
What songs did you, by the way, play with Otis when you were touring with him? He's known for Respect, Poor Pitiful Me. Sam Cooke is known for A Change Is Gonna Come. Did you play any of these songs while you were with them?
Certainly, that's the reason when they were there, their hit songs were hot and it was on the market, and that's what attracted the crowds. Yeah, so whatever their itinerary called for, that's what we played. They would send us a list ahead of the songs that they wanted us to play, and of course, it included all of their popular songs.
Tell me a little bit about, I want to go back a little bit now in history with Robert Taylor. We're going to try to cover a lot of ground in these podcasts. Again, these podcasts I hope will live on for a long, long time because they are about our history, and it's so vital to understand this. Tell me a little bit about where you were born, Robert. Tell me about your father and mother, what your father did for work, and let's just talk a little bit about your own family history.
Okay. Well, I was born in Reserve. Reserve was in St. John the Baptist Parish, which is where the largest sugar refinery in this part of the country was, called Gotchaw Sugars. And people came from all around the local areas to work at that refinery. And my father, who came from the West Bank of St. James Parish, he came to that plant. That's how he was working at that plant. And he met my mother's brother at that plant. And that's how he met her. And they married, they moved to Reserve. And that's where I was born in 1940.
And what is your father and mother's names?
My father was Robert Taylor Sr., and my mother was Louisa Jones Taylor.
Now, Robert Taylor is a name that has a long history in the river parishes, because I believe there's a Robert Taylor, is it your great-grandfather who was a reverend or a preacher, or was it your great-great-grandfather? You have a lineage that you can trace back a little bit farther than your father. I remember we talked about it in the past.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. My grandfather, no, well, you see, my father was named by his dad, my grandfather, after the great-grandfather you're talking about. Yes, I had a great-grandfather named Robert Taylor, and he was very active. He was in the next parish up, Ascension, Iberville. That's where his body is interred at a cemetery that he purchased and built for the community, which was later bought up by one of the chemical companies, and they roped off. They enclosed the cemetery in a fence.
That was Marathon.
Huh?
That was Marathon.
No,
Was that
no.
not Marathon?
Marathon did that to Robert Taylor, my father,
Oh my!
in Reserve.
Yeah, who did it to your great-grandfather?
Uh,
You remember which chemical company?
I don't remember. They're still there
Yeah,
in
we have
those
to go
two.
visit it. We have to go
Yeah,
visit that area.
yeah,
Now,
we'll go and we'll look and we'll see. You can't go there without getting the permission of that chemical plant.
this is
It-
which is really obscene,
yeah,
which is really obscene because who has to ask permission to visit their own family gravesite? One that your family financed and purchased. Now, which of your is it your father whose gravesite is beneath a toxic waste pond?
no, my grandfather.
It's your grandfather.
Hmm.
And
That's
tell me,
another chemical plant
yeah,
that's on the west bank of St. James Parish, in a little town called Lauderdale. The matter of fact, that plant he annihilated that whole community, and where they built their wastewater pond on top of the cemetery in Lauderdale, and the thousands of people under there are now under that wastewater pond in Lauderdale.
which plant is that? Is
It's
that
hard for
Mosaic?
me to really, huh?
Is that Mosaic?
I think, yeah, that's the plant called Mosaic.
Yeah, so that's
And
a big phosphate fertilizer plant.
yeah, I think they are the ones that got plants on both sides of the river up there.
Yeah, there's CF Industries too.
That's a little
Yeah,
further up, not too
yeah,
far away.
yeah.
CF Industries is close by as well.
I know because when I stay up in St. James Parish at one of the local hotels there, my view is of CF Industries out of my window on one side and Mosaic at the other. And all night long, they are flaming and off-gassing. And you wake up in the morning and you go, what is that smell? What is the color of the sky? Why is the sky yellow? So I know these plants quite well. But we're
It,
going to get
it,
to know them better.
it's unbelievable what the local people have to suffer through as a result of these chemical plants. It's
It's a
nightmarish. The
yeah,
average
it's a Hades.
person, yes,
It's a hellscape.
yes,
Folks need to go there and experience when you wake up in the morning, your sheets smell. When you take a shower, the water is a kind of a different little color. You can see it in the light because there's chemicals like hexachloropentatine that are still in the drinking water. And these chemicals could be removed if the public officials cared enough to buy more expensive filtration equipment for all the pollution. That's another issue that we need to deal with. So, this is so let me recount this. There's a plant spewing chloroprene on the community. There's a toxic waste pond covering over the graves of thousands of community members. There's an oil company that has taken over another grave that Robert's family, his great grandfather paid for, Robert Taylor, the Reverend. That was the Reverend Robert Taylor, right? You're great.
yes.
Yeah. And this is not normal. This is not normal, folks. This is dystopia. And he's fighting this. This is not happening anywhere else. There is so much pollution coming out of Cancer Alley that when I say the survival of the planet is at stake, it's because they are planning to build many more plants there. And what happens is the chemical companies let the people get sick. They wait them out and then they buy their property on the cheap, because who the heck else would buy property right next to a chemical plant spewing chemicals like chloroprene? When I started this show and mentioned the word genocide, I know people may cringe or think a little bit about that word in a way. I'm not using it loosely. That is the plan. Kill them all, take over the community so they can expand the plants. They've done it by creating toxic waste ponds over the sacred graves of thousands of people. They've taken over grave sites. of Robert's great-grandfather and other community members. They are extinguishing and erasing a community. Recently, the National Park Service took away the designation as the Great River Road for being a National Historic Site to open up even more destruction. So I want to talk to you about a couple things you need to do now if you're listening to this show. Quit buying so much plastic, okay? Most of these plants are making petrochemicals now, acrylates, polymers, polyester, and these are the chemicals killing my friends. So think more conscientiously about your shopping. You know, so Robert, how many siblings did you have in your family?
There were 6 of us.
Mm-hmm. Tell me their names and who survived and who died and who lived in reserve near the plant, and if they died, what kind of cancers or other illnesses.
Well, we all lived in reserve. There was Ida, my oldest sister. I was next in line. And then there was David and Warren, Glenda, and Larry.
Tell me about each of them.
Well, Ida being the oldest, she lived a full life. She was 90 when she died about 4 years ago. Glenda died early of diseases that we suspect she caught from the plant from living, because she lived, that plant was right on a fence line where she built her home and
So that would be
lived.
like 30th or 31st Street or something like that.
29th.
29th, yeah.
Yeah, her backyard, her back fence was the fence line to Dupont Denka. And they had a dump site there that was not legal, I don't think. My brother David, he died of cancer.
What kind of cancer do you know?
Lung cancer. I don't know. It had metastasized, so I'm not sure where it originated.
Yeah.
Because it had metastasized.
I mean, these are not smokers.
No.
So don't blame this on smoking, okay? That's what a lot of cancer deniers do. They just say, oh, he didn't exercise enough, or he was fat, or he smoked. Come on. Smoking is a cause of cancer, but this is a non-smoker.
But this is cancer. I mean, smoking is not the cause of all lung cancers.
That's what I'm saying. In fact,
I know so
longer
many people.
Yeah.
I know so many people who were not smokers who died of lung cancer. Man, they contracted lung cancer and died.
Well, you're breathing in chloroprene, benzene, and ethylene oxide in the community air. All of these are very powerful cancer-causing agents at multiple sites.
Well, David, the state of Louisiana licensed Dupont Denka to dump 29 chemicals in our air, water, and land. They licensed Dupont Denka to do deep well injections, to dump chloroprene and other of these 29 other chemicals down into our natural aquifer. They were allowed to dump tons of it into the Mississippi River, which is our main source of water. And of course, they were allowed to dump tens of tons of it, hundreds of tons of it into the air for us to breathe.
Tell me about your 3 other siblings, your 3 other siblings.
Well, the one of the brothers moved to Los Angeles. Larry, the youngest one, he's there. And the next brother that's surviving, he lives in New Orleans. I'm the only one that's still living in reserve.
So the ones who moved away are still surviving.
Yes.
That's something to note, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And your father worked at the sugar mill, right? Or the
Yes.
refinery?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. What about his siblings? Where did they work?
I don't know because they were from the West Bank of St. James, and I didn't know many of my uncles. There were only two aunts, and I knew her. She lived in Reserve. But his other brothers, he was the only one that came to Reserve that I was around, that I knew.
Did any of them work in the fields?
Huh?
Did any work in the cane fields?
Well, most of them started out working in the cane fields. Yeah, I worked in the cane field one day only, but yeah, I tried it. Just about back then when you were growing up in the 50s, I mean, sugar cane field was in your backyard. You go out the door, you're in the cane field. So most people had experiences either with the plant or out there with the real plant, the sugar cane itself. So, but most of my dad's brothers had relocated.
But working in the fields, that's I don't think people get how tough that is. You're swinging a knife to chop down that cane, or at least at some point you were swinging a knife, and there are boilers, and it's kind of a hazardous. It's hazardous. Tell me a
It's
little.
terrible. It's terrible, David. See what happened? My mom had a sister, and she lived right over, but she was single. Her husband and they had separated, and she had 9 children. So she went to work in the sugarcane field, man. And I used to go and stay with her because I had so many cousins there. And I used to watch her get up in the mornings and get dressed in jeans with a dress on top of it, with gloves on and a cane knife. And her kids who was 11, 12, 13, they worked in the sugarcane field too. That's why I tried it one morning. I got up and I said, well, I'm going to go and work with them. But I couldn't handle it. I left at 11 o'clock because I could not work. But my aunt actually worked from sun up to sundown in those sugarcane fields. And some of her children worked out there with her, which was the case with most of the black people at that time in that place.
So your father was rather fortunate to be working in the mill or the refinery. It was probably better pay and
Better pay, and they provided housing for their employees.
Mhm.
The house we lived in belonged to the sugar refinery.
And this is let me ask you something. The person we're talking about who owned the mill was Leon Gottschall, who bought his land during the crash of the cane and cotton markets during the Civil War and right afterwards. I think
No, sir.
Tell me. You tell me.
That was an up and running sugar refinery when Leon Gottschall got it. 2 Frenchmen came here, 2 black Frenchmen. One of them was the doctor who perfected the sugarcane process. There were 2 brothers. They built that refinery. They started that whole process of sugarcane. Leon Gottschall came by later, and they took that refinery away from those black guys in the 1800s.
Interesting. Where did you learn this? Did you learn this in high school, or how did you learn this?
I learned this because an historian came to our community and wrote the whole story. There's a book out about it right now that you can buy, where it's all detailed out exactly how it went about. When those Jewish guys came up the river, entrepreneurs looking for stuff, and they stopped in that refinery and saw what it was and with a potential for it, but those brothers did not want to sell it. So they continued on upriver. Matter of fact, that's how it's got its name according to the story. They said, well, we'll reserve this, we'll mark this, let's reserve this project for later. And they continued on upriver acquiring properties and finally came back to reserve and were able to get those guys out of there. They were able to get rid of those guys, and they took it over and named it after the head guy, Leon Gotcha.
How was reserve? Oh, go on. Sorry, Robert.
I think I've got a copy of that book somewhere around here.
Oh, you'll have to pull it out when we get together next time.
Yeah, I'll look for it.
Listen, I have another question for you. How was Reserve founded?
I really don't know how Reserve was founded, but it was by the original, it was built up around that plantation.
Was it founded by emancipated persons right after the Civil War as a free town, or did it come about a different way?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that, David. Matter of fact, I think I need to research that.
Like a lot of towns in the river parishes, particularly Cancer Alley, are what you call free towns. They were built up right beside the plantations by the emancipated African Americans. They weren't given 40 acres and a mule. These towns, like Reserve, were built up just through local commerce. Like Welcome, I think, is a free town on the other side of the river in St. James.
Yeah, in St. James, yes.
I didn't know the history of Reserve. People can, there's like people confuse Reserve with LaPlace and stuff. So it's a little confusing to me, but it would be great to know more about how the Reserve did begin. And that wasn't its original name.
No. It was not its original name.
Didn't it have a French name or something? I forget.
I don't know what it was called, but I think it must have been French because historically we know that it was the Gotchas upon their purchase of it, and they named it Reserve, whatever the community name was.
Folks, I just want to recount a little. I want to recount a little bit about our interview today. Dupont Denka, the lawsuit that the Trump administration dropped, it appears that it will be taken up by Robert Taylor and the Concerned Citizens of St. John and some courageous attorneys. I'll keep you updated on that. That's the big news. I hope you'll tune in to more podcasts with Robert and I as we explore the history of Cancer Alley, a very vital part of our American history. It's a fascinating history with a fascinating man. And this is just the first of many podcasts. Robert, where can people learn more about Concerned Citizens of St. John?
They can go to our website, concernedcitizensofstjohn.com.
Oh, great. And please think about your shopping choices. Let me just give you some things. These are things I mention in my new book, Raising Healthy Kids, Protecting Your Children from Hidden Chemical Toxins, which is available on Amazon. But things like this. If you're buying a little koozie for your cold drinks, don't get the neoprene one. Avoid neoprene. If you're buying a jump rope, get one with wood handles, not neoprene handles. If you're buying dumbbells to work out, get steel, not neoprene. If you're buying a beach tote, don't get the neoprene ones. If you're a surfer out in California, man, did you know you can buy wetsuits now that are not made from neoprene? Send a message. Stop polluting with so much of these products, because the company that's killing people in Reserve, Louisiana is making these neoprene products, and they need to be curbed and sent a message. Do your part, because together we can really shift markets. And in a time of resistance, we have to use our voices as our shopping dollars, because that's one of the ways we fight what is going on now. So please look for my book, Raising Healthy Kids. It's on Amazon. Please go to Concerned Citizens of St. John. You can find me also at by David Steinman on X, formerly Twitter, at David Steinman _author on Instagram. And please join us for more podcasts. This is the Heartland Podcast. Thanks, Robert Taylor, for being my guest today.
Thank you, David.